Today we're going to be looking at how we can change centimetres into millimetres. You have a grid like this on a piece of paper posted on show before you. So I'm going to show you how to use this method, and if you find this method useful, I strongly suggest that you print off the grid and then you can write in here and then put your answers on a different sheet. So you can see here I've written out 8 questions for us to work through, and I'm going to go through exactly the same process for each one of them. If you're still unsure of something, then join me on Zoom this morning, details on Shobi, and we can go through it again with you. So we're going to start off by just looking at what do we do with whole centimetres, and then how do we deal with centimetres and millimetres. Your place value here is important. If you get your place value correct, then it becomes so much easier. So we're going to start off with 4 centimetres. All I do is I'm going to put my 4 in the units column. Now, there are 10 millimetres to every centimetre. What that means is that we then make our answer 10 times bigger, which means that this 4 is going to jump into this column here. So if my 4 suddenly moves there, that means this column is empty, which means I need to put a 0 in there. So that now gives me my answer of 40 millimetres. I now do exactly the same thing with the 7 centimetres. I put the 7 in here. I need to make it 10 times bigger because there are 10 millimetres to every centimetre. So that means my 7 jumps into there, and I now put a 0 underneath there, so that gives me 70 millimetres. Remember, we can only put one digit in one column. So here we have 11 centimetres. That's made up of 1 10 and 1 unit. That means each of these needs to move. So that moves over there. This moves over here. So 1 and 1, which means it's a 0, which then gives me 110 millimetres. Okay, so that's how we deal with whole centimetres. When we're dealing with centimetres and millimetres, we need to write it as a decimal. So I'm just going to put a separating line underneath here, and we're going to look at these. 1 centimetre, the centimetres are the same as my units. My millimetres are really my tenths numbers, so that goes in there. So that's how I would write down 1 centimetre, 4 millimetres. Exactly the same idea. I make everything 10 times bigger because I'm multiplying by 10, because there are 10 millimetres in a centimetre, which means that the 1 goes there into that column. My 4 has to jump across the decimal point and come into the units column. So he jumps all the way across over there to give me that. Okay, so 1 centimetre and 4 millimetres now is the same as 14 millimetres. And the same idea follows. Okay, 3 centimetres and 8 millimetres. My 3 goes there, and my 8 millimetres goes there. I'm not going to put the arrows in now because I'm running out of space, but hopefully you get the idea. Every number now jumps, or every digit jumps across to the next column. So my 3 jumps into the tens, my 8 jumps into the units, and that gives me 38 millimetres. This one, 14 centimetres and 9 millimetres. 14 is made up of 1 10, 4 units. 9 millimetres is the same as 9 tenths. Exactly the same idea. I'm multiplying by 10, which means that every digit jumps 1 place. So my 1 comes into the hundreds, my 4 jumps into the tens, and my 9 jumps across to the units. So that gives me 149 millimetres. 25.3, so 25 is my 2 tens and my 5 units. My 3 is the same as my 3 tenths. So this again, everything jumps one column to the left. So my 2 goes into the hundreds, my 5 goes into the tens, and my 3 goes into the units. So that now gives me 253 millimeters. And then the very last one, 36 centimeters and 7 millimeters. So 3, 6, 3 in the tens column, 6 in the units column, and then my 7 in the tenths column. So that gives me 36.7. That means now I need to make everything 10 times bigger, because that's all we're doing for the whole of this lesson, making every number 10 times bigger, because there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter. 3 jumps across into the hundreds, 6 jumps across into the tens, 7 jumps across into the units, which gives me 367 millimeters. And that's how we change centimeters into millimeters.